Welcome to the Mindful Evolution Podcast, where I help you honor your authentic power, expand your impact, and step into your next level of heart-led leadership. Together, we will discuss all things life, relationships, business, spirituality, and personal development so you can build your soul-aligned life and be a permission slip for others to do the same. I'm your host, Leah Drew, women's empowerment coach, feminine embodiment guide, and a woman of many talents. Welcome to the community. Now, let's rise together. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Mindful Evolution Podcast. I'm excited to dive into today's conversation where we're going to be discussing everything around the concept of soul work, the understanding of what exactly this new world is that people are talking about, what it means, what it looks like, and how you can start to bring more purpose, more passion, and more of this creative magnetism into your life so that you can be a part of helping with creating this new world, being a part of this experience. You are the ripple effects for the world around you. So today I have the amazing Lauren DeMarco on the podcast. Lauren, I'm so excited to have you here and have some chit chat around all of these fun, yummy topics that are being discussed in the conscious community right now.
Thanks for hosting me. I'm excited to get my voice out there. This is really good practice because I have a lot to share and receive in this next chapter, and nervous and excited, like with all things worth pursuing.
Absolutely. And I'm really excited to offer you the space to support you in sharing your voice. And you have had a really yummy path and a yummy journey into this soul work that you refer to, that you are really fully stepping into now. And you were at one point a social worker and a trauma therapist, and you've shifted into what you call yourself a soul worker for sensitive CEOs. And I would love for you to share a little bit on this recalibration, on this realigning experience that you've stepped into that I know you've expressed to me has been full of more authenticity. But can you share a little bit with me and with the listener about what has this process looked like where you have realigned with your soul's purpose?
Yes. So the move from working, at least on paper, from mental health healing and social working to claiming the soul work that I've always been doing has allowed me to expand more fully into myself. Our words matter. A lot of helpers and healers are doing amazing transformational work under different labels. And there's nothing truly wrong with all of these labels. Mental health, brain health, which I am learning more about, to use that word, is so important, really validating that, this physical manifestation of illness, mental illness. But I have always been drawn to spirit, and this has been my time to finally unmask that. And so I have been through many chapters, I would say, in the past 15 years that have been really pivotal moments up to this point where I'm finally coming out, I would say, as a soul worker. But I think in the past few years have been some of the major pushes from the universe timely, interesting things I couldn't explain, that pushed me to really face myself and do really, really, really hard things that involved so many layers of grief. And in that process, seeing that I could expand in myself and do these things that people are like, what the hell are you doing? But also people are like, damn, Lauren, that's pretty cool. Like, go you. But like, I don't know. I don't know if I can see all this. I believe in you, but I don't know if I can see the vision you see. But just going through that journey and just really seeing my relationships and my clients in the world from a different perspective through my own struggles and challenges and such liberating moments and times that have been so painful. So, all that to say, really leaning into my purpose and helping people do really, really hard things so that they can be who they really are and do their thing here on earth in their lifetime. I see things for a long time now. I'm just more verbal and honest about it, but I say much of my life I believed in lifetimes. And this human experience as a life school. And so, as a soul worker, we're explicitly looking at our life in this chapter as what are we learning? What are we releasing? What are we revealing? What are we creating space to grow into? How are we leaving space to expand into the unknown and letting the universe, as we co-create with intuitively aligned action, provide us the next step?
Yeah, I'm hearing this journey for you into what you call your soul work. Being a soul worker is really helping others step into their fullest selves, step into their magic, step into their unique gifts, step into the things that they're here to give to themselves and serve the rest of the world with as well. And something that I heard you touch on here was being a permission slip for others. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things when you align yourself with this spirit-led journey, right? Not necessarily the journey of the mind, but the journey of the body and the soul. And when you do that, you do the exciting and the hard things, you lean into them because you know that that is the way that you are being called, that you're being guided based off of your spirit, your soul, your body. Because the mind just gets into all this chatter that tries to protect us and support us and ultimately from being hurt, right? And this journey of being spirit led and heart led, as I love to add in there myself, really allows you to become a permission slip, in my experience, for the rest of the world to step into their gifts, to step into their magic, to step out of the box that society has put us in that says you have to look this way, you have to speak this way, you have to do things that way. And it's like, no, actually, like I get to do the ways that feel good for me. And I'm hearing in this transition from being a social worker and transitioning from a trauma therapist into this guide for other CEOs to really find their spirit-led path has allowed you to experience so much more in life and to tune into like, what is it that I'm being called forwards towards versus, in my experience, like, what is it that somebody told me to be? And what does it look like the way that somebody showed me?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that came up just before we met. I'm always trying to focus, but in a lot of ways, we're transcending the training. And it's interesting the word training is coming up. I usually say things like the conditioning, and these are all familiar concepts for people who work in anti-oppressive spiritual spaces and speak this way. But transcending the training, which is an interesting concept for me. I am still a licensed professional. I still need to take trainings to maintain my continuing education for the current clients that I do have. And the training, professional training, is so important. And
Yes, and world. We'll get into
and
this.
we've been training for this life since before we were conceived. And I think what people are not always tapped into, and that can show up in other ways in their relationships and how they feel about themselves, manifestation of being unwell mysteriously in the body, has a lot to do with forgetting the soul training that was already taking place before they came, and what they are learning from the soul perspective now that really goes beyond and extends beyond what we can learn in books. There was actually was it Lao Tzu maybe, as I was just doing a little brief meditation before we met, an insight timer.
Great
The
app.
more we know, the less, what is it? The more we learn, the less we know, something like that. It was something like that, but that comes to mind, right? Um, Holding space for the uncertainty. And how can we merge training? Like to this day in my soul work, you can't take the social worker completely out of me. You can't bring this trauma therapist out of me. It's actually what I offer and part of what you get with me. I work very focusedly, intuitively, professionally. I still bring my ethics with me. I know about boundaries, blah, 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 blah. All the somatic, the science, blah, blah, blah. That's also important. And we also bring something well beyond what a degree that we purchase and can only have access through certain access points of privilege and economic access, racial, gender, sexuality, identity, country of birth, etc. All of that dictates some of this traditional training. And I think it downplays what we have to offer. And so I love working with folks who are often pivoting careers. Actually, in my therapy practice for many years, I found myself working with people and they leave their jobs. And I found myself as being a therapist primarily therapist for a long time. It's like, I'm just prepping them to stop doing mental health. And what does that say about, right? About me, right? About how do I feel about this? But I think in the strength side of that, I love helping people step into that uncertainty of what they want to grow into and getting back to some basics, right? Sure, you have all this training, but what can we create here? What do you have available to you that pre-exists the formal training, the career that you had? How can you merge what it means to be a parent? There are so many beautiful skills and things that as a parent, as a caregiver, as somebody who's had multiple careers or have had struggle in life. They have more gifts than any degree could give you, right? And identifying that and being able to speak on that. What am I learning? What can I do to both feel more fulfilled, feel more peaceful, live the way I actually am feeling called to live, treat people the way I'm really feeling called to treat them, and honoring who we are and the complexity of being in order to do that. And that means even the shadow stuff too, it ain't all just pretty airy fairy stuff. I mean, we all will face parts of ourselves, I think, across a lifetime of ooh, didn't recognize the depth of that. But how that really is such an opening and opportunity for what life can give you. And if you don't do some of that, you really limit your expansion of, I think, ability to connect to joy, love, vulnerability, understanding, compassion, looking at ourselves clearer and clearer all the time and holding space for uncertainty and just allowing ourselves to grow into those spaces helps us love other people.
Totally.
We are less angry at people. We are less passive aggressive. We are less resentful when we are spending loving energy with ourselves and our own soul evolution. And we are helping other people evolve just by being who we are, because We're a human system. We are an ecosystem. Nothing is disconnected from another thing. So that's the other piece, just really allowing people to really let's step into the big view here. There's like the details. Let's look at the logistics and like what's not working, like life math. Sometimes we're doing life math. I'm hearing you don't like this, and you really want this, but I hear you're doing a lot of this. And really just presenting that to people. How do you feel about that? You really don't like that, but that's what you're spending 30% of your time doing. And really being curious about the narratives of what we can and cannot do, how we can and cannot live, unpacking a lot of social, cultural values, a lot of colonial perspectives that we're all seeped in, at least in the US and honestly across the globe. It's not, there's no place on this globe
Everywhere.
I don't, right. It's huge. There's colonial, there's racial pieces, there's oppression that we're all sitting in. Some of us get touched by it more than others. And really being curious about how do we feel about the life that we're co-creating with right now? How do we feel about how we're spending our money, our time,
Our
the things that we
energy,
collect, our energy, right? Well, things are energy, right? And that's
everything.
the piece too, like our relationships to one another. Your relationship to yourself dictates your relationship to the world. And people would have a lot of arguments around that. But I think if you're curious about the nuance of what that means, right? If you're in denial with self, you are in denial of others' experience as well. If you inflate yourself and deflate others, that is still the natural pendulum swing, right? You're inflating yourself to deflate parts of yourself, which then, right, that there's an imbalance and lack of integrity there. So I think this spiritual, relational, and practical. Spiritual is practical. That's
Yeah.
another thing that I'm often I'll find myself posting about. I'll like take pictures of like, this is soul work, putting my feet in the grass, soul work, looking at my money again. Shit, don't like that. Damn it.
Well,
I was
it's
living
like
in denial, right?
you're talking about the zooming out, right? And getting a different perspective and
Mm-hmm.
being able to reflect on this moment in time. And it's always super helpful for me sometimes to just give myself the reminder. It's like, just a reminder, you are a little speck of dust floating on this planet in the middle of this atmosphere. Like, just to put things into perspective sometimes, because we can take things so fucking seriously that it's like at the end of the day, like you're this tiny little speck of dust in the atmosphere, right? And the thing is, when you start to zoom out, you can get a better perspective of what are the parts and the pieces that are making up the whole, which is your experience. And I have a mentor that says you cannot disown that which you have never owned. And it brings into conversation what you're talking about here, where it's looking at yourself, taking ownership within yourself. And so much of the world around us wants to just point a finger at everyone and everything outside of themselves. And the thing is, nothing is ever going to change as long as you continue pointing the finger outwardly. The things will change when you start pointing the finger inwardly and say, how am I attracting this? How am I welcoming this? Why am I welcoming this? What within me is no longer in resonance with this experience that I'm having outside of me? Mm-hmm. And I love what you said a little while ago around transcending the training, because there is so much that we know, but that which we know is like this big in comparison to that which we don't know, which is like all of this, right? It's massive. And like science only knows this tiny little amount of what the human brain is actually capable of, which is mind-boggling, because you go on Google, you type one thing in on Google and you have resources for days, right? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting talking about this transcending the training, because I am very much in alignment with what you're expressing here. It's like, yes, the training is important. It is your foundation, right? It is the soil with which you plant your magical crops in that then get to grow and flourish into that which makes you unique, that which allows your magic to be shed upon the world around you, be shared with the world around you. It allows you to really get clear on what is it that you are meant to be of service with. And how are these ripple effects that you are creating, how does that get to affect the world? It brings me back to, for me, my first, let's say job, my first line of work was in pain management. I was a functional rehab practitioner. I was like a spiritual, energetic body worker. I did all of these things to put them together to help people understand why they're having chronic pain and how they can overcome it and support themselves through it. And I used to go to all these trainings and watch the teachers and be like, oh my God, I have to do it exactly like them. This is the modality. You're doing it wrong if you don't do it in the A, B, C, D, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 realm. And what I realized is when I actually let go of that, adopted the foundations of what they're teaching me and allowed my intuition, my soul to guide me, the energetics to show me what my next steps were while standing on that foundation, which was the soil that I learned from my teachers, that's when I had the most powerful results. That's when my clients got to experience a more of a reduction in their pain and their symptoms because I was standing on the foundation that I was shown, but I was leading the way through my own soul, through the light within myself, through my own intuition that was helping me transcend the training, right? Like you said, the trainings are important, but they're just meant as a stepping stone to help you continue forwards on your unique path. And the moment that you break free of the thoughts of, I need to do it the exact same way that my teacher did it. I remember being a little girl and like being in art class and like trying to make my picture look exactly like the art teachers. And that doesn't allow your magic to come through. And so I love what you're sharing here about like really being able to tap into source, really being able to find alignment with your soul, with spirit, with that which makes you unique. And a little bit of a different topic, we can go into this if you want to, but that's one of the reasons that I have found so much love for plant medicines, because they help me unveil that which is covered that my conscious mind doesn't always have the ability to see, so that I can really feel into the unknown, really be with the surrender experience, because in that surrender is, at least for me, where I continue to realign over and over and over again with my soul's path.
I love it. You know, I was just thinking as you said surrender. I have found that surrender is where I have finally found myself again and again. In step 1 and step 2 is where you you get back up and you start walking based on what you experienced during surrender. Surrendering to yourself, to all that is, and then reconnecting with the charge. Why do things matter to us? It's the goddess and the warrior energy there. To receive, to be quiet, to be observed, to take in, to feel, to explore, and then move into creation based on a deep feeling of knowing and integrating with action.
You bring up for me, there's two different, in my world, I have two different definitions of knowledge, right? This way of knowing. There's knowledge that you get from the books, that you get from all the courses, right? It's like knowledge with a lowercase k. And then there's knowledge, in my opinion, with an uppercase K. And this uppercase K knowledge is what you know within yourself to be true. It is the higher intelligence within you that is guiding you every step of the way. It is that direct connection to spirit that is flowing through your channel to help you be in that space of all knowing, of all seeing, of all understanding, while being in the space of surrender. And I love that you brought that up. And I do think that, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, do you think that surrender that experience of fully surrendering is how we get quote unquote unstuck in our lives.
I'm going to come back to, I think it's to name what you're talking about. We use a lot out in the world, but a lot of mental health folks will call this from lived experience. There is a movement that remembering yourself, lived experience is training. Culturally, we've been kind of pushed out of it, and I feel like there's a lot of reasons for that. Sometimes it's political, it's waves of what's popular. We get unstuck from, I think, some radical awareness and surrender to some very complex truths that are often really uncomfortable to sit with. And sometimes it's as beautiful as, wow, I don't think this is going to get any better. And I am finding I am more capable and more curious about what life can look like beyond this point. And how do I want to start exploring into that space? How do I want to get out with my active self? How do I want to start envisioning? The unstuckness, ultimately, I feel like it starts with surrender and then continues with action.
I so agree with that, because if you don't take any steps to shatter the beliefs, to shatter the stories, to shatter the identity that you have locked yourself in chains with, you can't create anything different. I was over the last couple of weeks, I was in Austin and I took part in this incredible personal development immersion that I highly recommend to you and to anyone listening. It was one of the greatest somatic healing immersions I've ever done in my life, and experiential. Like the entire time in this immersion, it is simulated to be what you experience out in life. And it highlights so much about yourself in a room of 70 to 90 other people. And you get to learn a lot about you, and you get to face a lot about you. Because if you don't have those reflections from yourself, from others, and those observations, it's really hard to actually see, what is this identity? What is this story? What is this belief that I've been holding on to, that I've been chained to, that is preventing me from taking action? And one of the things that one of my small group coaches encouraged me into was play with your edges. Do the thing that you would never do. Try on something completely different, polar opposite than you would normally do for yourself. And it allowed me to really play with these like extreme ends of the spectrum. And sometimes I'd do that and be like, oh, that's a whole hell no for me, right? But as you start to learn what those yeses and those nos are, and unchain yourself from the identities, the stories, the beliefs, you get to find the harmony between, oh, where do I want to take action, and what steps of action do feel good for me, and what steps of action are aligned for me right now. And I believe that's such an important experience. It's why I love to travel solo so much, because it gives me that ability to step back into those containers of silencing the external, in a sense, the normal external that you're in your everyday life, and getting to say, what feels good for me right now? Not what felt good for me yesterday or 2 months ago or 2 years ago. What feels good for me right now? And one of the things that I was having a conversation with my friend about this past weekend was, we forget that on a microscopic level, our bodies, our physical being is constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly shedding. You are constantly becoming a new physical version of yourself.
Mhm.
And we don't think about that when it comes to our minds and our souls. Because if we're doing that on a physical level, you're also doing that on a mental and an energetic level. And the mind, the body, the soul, they all get to come together and they all get to evolve together constantly into these constant new versions of yourself. And I do think that society, you talked a little bit about this, plays a little bit of a role in almost creating some shame and some guilt that you are becoming a different person. And so it leads people, I think, to put themselves in that box and say, no, 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 this is me. This is who I am. Rather than allow the surrender to change and to evolution. Because I think a lot of times people, and there's so many different ways to look at this, but what's coming through right now for me is people, I think, are afraid of change because they're afraid of what people are going to think of them. They're afraid of whether they're going to be accepted or rejected. Oftentimes people are people pleasing, trying to be who they think they need to be to fit somebody else's experience. And that's not what allows you to step into your soul work.
Mhm. So I'm sitting with there's a lot here. So there's like social biological reasons why we're afraid to be judged. But it goes far beyond that. I take very much a historical, social, cultural, economic, I take those lenses into reflection and I reflect them back to clients, myself included. And I've done a lot of identity work and I still am an identity explorer in so many ways with ancestry and understanding the generational patterns and um but it's been economically from a power structure perspective beneficial for people and power for people to be ashamed of wanting more. Because if you want more, you won't need us. You need our jobs. You need you need this pension. You need this insurance. And if you don't, you're going to be out on the street. And by the way, let's out on some shame about that. And let's poverty shame. And so you have people walking around who don't even know, just they have a lot of internalized oppressive narratives and they're angry at other people because they don't even see how gypped they really are too. And so I really validate people's fawning behavior. That's kind of a trauma. If you're familiar with the trauma narrative, like the trauma responses, it has been socially acceptable and reinforced, particularly for women, to settle. Right? We have this whole created, socialized around being digestible and nice and pretty and staying small and subservient.
The good girl.
Yes, right? And so there's just a lot of real conditioning and it's in our DNA. I mean, a lot of when I talk about soul work, we are shifting your legacy. I know you and I talked about that before we recorded here a little while ago. We are shifting our legacy forward. You are literally, okay, I don't want to speak so grandly as if I'm, in the lab on this, but there is a great possibility that by raising your children and treating younger generations differently, that we are breaking these cycles of oppression and trauma in our DNA, which I'm of the opinion, and there's evolving research to support that around, especially around epigenetics, that like your kid might not be anxious and depressed. Your kid might not pick a relationship that's terrible for them. They may not have the same medical presentation because you have given them the gift of choice. Some of our ancestors, they didn't have those choices.
No.
They're just coming over here on a boat. Speaking of chains, you said chains multiple times, which is like a wink to me of like, slavery, that people were forced to come here and chained. And so when you talk about generational chains, that's real, right? Like we are carrying that in our energy field until we acknowledge and repair and create an opening for continuing to expand and transcend, which happens through the self and authentic relationships with self and with other people.
Yeah, and I think something that's also really important to add here is yes, you're choosing something different, but it's also like allowing the energy to move through you. When something comes up, allowing the body to process it. Because for so long our ancestors didn't have a choice. And so they didn't have the tools that we have today. And they didn't understand how the body holds trauma, right? And so yes, like your children, looking at epigenetics, a study of your environment and how it influences the expression of yourself, your genes specifically, your children may not have these same experiences, the anxiety, the depression, the GI issues. And I believe, and this is where you and I come in as soul workers, it's our job to help others realize that by doing this work and processing the energy and allowing that to flow through them, that is what clears the channel, the physical body, so that your future children, your future generations, they don't experience these same things because they don't still have this energy trapped within them. And I want to offer something here for those that are listening that are like, okay, so how do I allow myself to just like let it move through me? One of the things that I encourage is like when you're feeling something come up, when you're feeling an emotion, when you're feeling an experience, standing tall, like opening the channel, having your hands like relaxed by your side, shoulders relaxed, like softness in the knees. And the most important thing is keeping the eyes open and relaxing the jaw. Not crossing your arms, not holding the things back, not shrinking, being tall, standing in your dignity with your jaw relaxed and open and allowing that energy to move through the body. Be with it rather than avoiding it and trying to cover it up.
Mm-hmm. So, and you're talking about assuming the position of someone who is safe, right? And so as people, it sounds like, I mean, you and I both have experience, I think, with levels of trauma. Healing on some level is my sense by the language you use. I mean, there's something to be said where the body is such an important entry point, right? That's the science of things. If your body is in a position of, I'm frozen and I'm going to bear down with my jaw and white knuckle, right? That's the bear's going to eat me, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's old wiring in your nervous system. And in modern world, depending where we're talking about, there's a lot going on in the world, lots of violence happening abroad. But there are so many things that can bring that up, right? Like if you are energetically not feeling safe in your life, some people are physically not safe. And sometimes your relationship is not good for you. To work, to partners, to friends, to the pressures, trying to do the things that are completely misaligned with what your body is telling you is working for you. That in itself is a violation of the mind, body, and spirit. And sometimes we don't know why, right? I think there's like science and types of brains. Like I myself have ADHD, neurodivergent, whatever you want to call it, magical. I'm also have clairvoyant abilities too. So there's these pieces that make some of us more prone to experience things more intensely. Highly sensitive folks, sensory processing sensitivities and things like that. Like your way of living may be different than what society is telling you should be.
And that's
right?
okay.
Exactly. And so there's like these pieces that are important about coming into what is this body really telling me, teaching me to do and take care of how to take care of my body, how I take care of my spirit, of my values, of the people in my life, and really returning to listening to those things. And acknowledging old stories. Part of the layer soul work that I also do, as someone who's highly intuitive and does have clair abilities, is I myself, because I'm sensitive, I don't do well working for somebody else. I don't do well being a packed schedule. I can't do all the things that some folks can do. But what I can do is I can connect you to intuitive knowledge from the spirit realm. So, like, I bring some of that intuitive guidance on what I'm getting. And often there's an energy within the other person. There's something to be released here. At least it's acknowledged. It's a lot of it's acknowledgement. It's not like, oh, it's my job to cycle break and cycle break and cycle break. I'm like, I don't know if it's all you, man. Like, it's okay. What's your part? Because we're only here passing the baton. They passed it to you. The shit that rolled downhill including, because they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't have the skills and supports and resources. But now you've been passed the baton, and what are you feeling called to do? What little wink are you getting from your generations and guides over here about that, right? Does it sit with you? How does that sit with you? And I watch people just, my God, I feel so much better. Like, body feels different. And it's like, and it wasn't me. It's shining light on the acknowledgement of the thing that needed to be seen.
Yeah.
It needed to be heard. The distress often just needs to be heard, like a crying child. Yeah. Stops crying if it gets his needs met eventually, right? We are no different.
The allowance to be with it. And you make such a beautiful point here is it's not all your responsibility. Like, it, I know for myself, I am the first woman in my family to step into this work, to step into really connecting with spirit outside of religious norms and exploring consciousness, exploring the self, right? And starting to unlock some of these chains that have plagued my family for a long time. And this year, as I started working with women and really specifically doing women's work and guiding women's work, spirit was like, okay, like spirit showed me what my work was. And I got to dive really deep into breaking patterns specifically with my mother and in the feminine lineage of the mother-daughter relationship. And I'll tell you right now, like it hasn't felt good all the time, right? Like sitting in plant medicines with my mom was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And through the whole experience, I knew, I was like, this is my work. Like, this is my responsibility. I get to take ownership of this. And there's other things that I've started to touch or tap into, and I didn't get the little wink over here from my guides and from spirit. Like, okay, like this may not be any of my responsibility in this lifetime. And accepting that and knowing that future generations will know, because it's like, and I feel like I'll speak for myself, but I feel like you may resonate with this. It's like, we flip the light on, right? Mm-hmm. And like genetically speaking, once you flip the light on, it's a lot harder to turn it off because now you know what's there. And so there's this trust in myself that future generations are going to continue this journey, continue this path, continue walking through this work, right? This soul work. And this leads me into the topic that I'm really interested in hearing more from you about is parenting. And I'm not a parent. I know you're a parent. And, one of the things that you and I were talking about is stepping into your career, stepping into your work in the world, stepping into being of service, whether that is in business or as a parent or as a friend or as a leader, to create this new world. And so before we dive into like the parenting stuff, because I'm so curious to hear from you and your perspective here, what is it that we are creating? Like, people are talking about this quote unquote new world, and you and I have spoken about this new way of living. What does that mean? What is that bringing forward? And what is this paradigm shift that's happening that you see?
Reestablishing right relationship to all things. What does that mean to me? I think it starts with starting this. We talk about this self-honesty. When we talk about aligning with spirit, with intuition, with what we're feeling guided to do, what feels right in our bodies, what other people, I mean, honestly, like eventually things do work out or you wouldn't keep following your intuition, right? Let's be real. Things are working out because you're on the right track. Um, but reestablishing that process with the world around you, you can only stretch energy so long before it has consequences to the energy you have invested. How you treat your body, how you treat your community, your home, anything, the earth. The future truly depends on how we reestablish relationship with what we require to live. So what does it mean to stay in relationship with one another? We need each other. Humans need each other. That will never change.
We're not meant to do it alone.
No, biologically, it's just not even in parenthood.
Mm-mm.
There is no such thing as like, I mean, I'm sure, you could have people say blah, blah, blah. You cannot be a healthy parent without support. And you're not supposed to, especially mothers. Your job is to literally carry the child and keep the child safe and secure and nourished and loved and attuned. Those are the extra layers, right? This is like the new generation identifying the attachment thing. And that's a lot. And the community's job is to help co-raise the children and care for parents and parents caring for each other and elders. And then we care for elders and we care for each other and that other people have things to offer and the earth has beautiful things to offer, but you cannot just keep taking without investing.
No.
And it doesn't have to be transactional. That's the piece too with right relationship. It's about these symbiotic, consensual relationships.
Me and my community, we have this understanding. It's like we're usually not super concerned about, getting money back for this thing that we brought to the gathering, right? Because it's like everything comes back. When you give, it always comes back, right? Because we are an ecosystem and we water each other and we work together. And on top of that, I have a lot of female clients who are mothers. And oftentimes I hear I'm so overwhelmed. I don't have time for myself. Like, I love being with my kids. And then when I ask the question, what percentage of the time do you actually feel like you're 110% present with your children? It's more often than not under 50%. And in response to that, I always ask, when's the last time you asked one of your fellow mother friends to do some child swapping with you so that you can have some time and space to yourself? And more often than not, it's, oh, wow, that's a really good idea. I haven't thought about that. Right? And it's like that aspect of, one, asking for what you need, taking the time and space to slow down to actually tune into your body and recognize what you need. And then two, asking for it. And that's really hard for women. It's hard for me to ask what I need for what I need sometimes.
We have been taught to ignore what we need because it's been convenient for distorted masculine systems is what I will say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a distortion of the taking and directing energy, which has left masculine also hurting.
Totally.
It's been convenient for the status quo is what I will say. For the status quo. To ignore the body, because if you know what you'd find out if you really listen to your body when you're on maternity leave, if you even can afford to take it, you should be taking 6 months. And who is going to pay for that? How are we going to? So these are real things. Some of these are these are structural, policy, cultural things that are in the way that we live, that it makes sense and I validate people. It's like, you never noticed? Because then I don't know if your clients will do this, be like, God, why did I feel, it's like, God, I feel so stupid. I feel so much better after I did that. And I'm like, you're not stupid. You've been literally talking about transcending training. You've been conditioned and trained to disconnect from yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody has.
Everyone and everything. Yeah. And it's really interesting right now, the next couple of months, we're going to see a lot around policy. I truly believe that regardless of politically speaking, who you intend to step into this election to vote for in September, for anyone listening, it's really interesting that we now have this individual, RFK Jr., who is coming in and being this bridge between the two sides. That it's not on one side looking at the other saying you're wrong, and it's not the other side looking at the other saying that you're wrong. He's coming forward as an independent, saying we need to bring reconnection to everything around us.
I'm having this reaction because people are in here this and think I'm nuts, but I actually have not been totally tuned into every political nuance for very intentional reasons, but I didn't know that RFK Jr. was getting involved. I have had some really recent intuitive dreams, and I didn't understand why I kept getting Kennedy references like a few weeks ago when I don't watch the news. And now I know why.
And this is part of the problem, because what's happening is that the news stations, the people in control, are silencing Kennedy. And the fact that we are silencing the conscious voice that's coming out and that is promoting and supporting and encouraging reconnection. Like, his whole thing is #America Strong. Like, let's bring both parties back together, not have this split in the world around us that's leading us to battle each other and to fight each other and leading all these policies to exactly.
It's just a pendulum, right? And it's like, I just had an older gentleman over the weekend ask me, are you on the left or right? And I went, I'm like at this man's party for very, very sacred reason. But like, I was like, I'm a hippie. Turns around. I'm like, I don't.
Accurate.
I was like,
I love your response. Are you left or right? You're like, I'm a hippie.
That's the best way to describe it.
Well, that being said, I invite you and anyone who's listening who has not tuned into anything that Kennedy is bringing forwards, practicing, preaching, speaking on. He has so many podcasts where he's brought forth like a lot of the problems, the dirty things that have been brushed under our government's rug for a really long time. He's bringing it forward and he's talking about it. And so this is the first time that you're hearing that Kennedy is running for president in 2024. I really invite you to tune into his agenda, to what it is that he is, the medicine he is spreading, because it is important.
Interesting.
But that being said, we started talking about the new world. And so...
Well, this is the world we're in. The world we're in has a two-party voting system, and it has the warrior kings and queens at play, and that is just the world that we are in. So I think being aware of those things is important.
And we're breaking the cycles, we're breaking the chains. And so coming back to what we started to talk about before is this idea of conscious parenting. Like, what does it mean to be a parent? What does it look like to be a parent that is stewarding this new world and this new way of living?
Oh, it is vulnerable. It is raw. You are facing again and again, facing the little one within who can reenact pain onto your children and having to face the sadness and remorse and shame of that is probably one of the hardest things. And we all do it. I've been a therapist for years. I worked with children and family. I know attachment. I know all the things. And that does not stop you from losing your shit, especially as someone who is doing things on her own a lot of the time and, um, prioritizing your actual needs for rest as a solo co-parent, because I'm not like, my child has a very involved parent. It's not anything like that. But still, I'm responsible for him financially on my own, on my side of the fence and energetically and emotionally. And I'm the mom, my little one's 4.5, gonna be 5. And he very much needs me at this stage still in a lot more. And it's such a precious stage. And so my ability to stay conscious and in reality and honesty with my needs literally dictates how I can parent my child. And interestingly enough, as you said, like, when are you 110% present with my son? Probably never. At most, maybe 90, 95. Some of that's just like also my brain. Because like sometimes like I need to be doing things and it's different from what your kid's wanting to do. So you're having to kind of attune to their energy and also take care of yourself. But it's really radical self-love, because it's really, really easy to just shame yourself, because you should know better. And I would say in the last several years, my own journey of healing and motherhood have brought up uncomfortable things with my mom as well, and feminine line healing. But it's been also so healing because I have a level of my work on myself and releasing a lot of the traumas and generational baggage and stuff, has transformed my relationship with my own mother and the mother in me, right? The mother in me and the mother and the humility that I have, in taking these huge generational leaps. Because I mean, the difference between her man and her, and then her to me is, it's just profound. So it's been a lot. And also, I really attribute motherhood to becoming the best and most honest version of myself.
That's beautiful. I can hear that it's been such a transformational process for you. And just, I say this about the entrepreneurial journey, but I say it's the deepest level of self-development that you could ever step into, because I'm not a parent. And I also recognize that becoming a parent takes you even deeper on that journey. And just honoring you for stepping into parenting in this way, in this conscious way, in this aware way, in this way that you are stewarding this new world, that you are stewarding this new way of living, and you get to be a leader in that. Because we are seeing a lot of differences in the last 3 generations, right? Your grandmother, your mother, and you. And you are a massive pattern breaker, as your mother broke her own patterns, right? As we step into this new world and into this new level of conscious awareness, and not just the knowing, but the being part of it, the taking action part of it, like we were talking about earlier on in the episode. I just want to honor you, because that does require so much commitment and resiliency and strength. And for any parent that's listening, I'm honoring you in this process and in this journey as well, because it's not easy being a parent. I see it in my friends. I see it in the world around me, in my community. And it is why we need each other. In our community, actually this past weekend, I had a birthday gathering, and I had about 30 of my closest friends here, minus a couple. And we have a couple of parents in the crew. And there was a couple that brought both of their kids. And every time they bring their children into our spaces with our community, whether that's at family-friendly festivals, whether that's at gatherings in our homes, whether that's at the park, the moment that they bring the children, it adds such a deeper level of impact to the experience. First of all, kids are the cleanest channel of source, the cleanest channel, so closely connected to source. And the energy that it brought into the space this weekend, having the kids around, not only being able to watch the parents and how the parents show up, but being able to notice how those children impact everyone at the party and the experience that each person has. It's powerful. And that would not be possible without people like yourself stepping into this conscious parenting, stepping into bringing deeper levels of awareness to the way that you show up for your children and teach your children how to show up for themselves. So thank you for guiding this journey for so many. And I'm curious, what is something that you would recommend to parents that are also stewarding this journey for their children into this new way of living? What is something that you would recommend to them to help keep them centered on this path?
Be shamelessly open to being safely and honestly loved. There is a myth that mothers should just be able to be good parents, no matter what their circumstance, and it's complete bullshit. And so surround yourself with good love. And if you are in relationships where you aren't feeling loved and safe and heard and secure, first and foremost, please go find yourself a counselor and a therapist and some other healing helpers, whether it's in network or pro bono, whatever you need to do. First, I would say, and let people help you. For the love of God, let people help you, and trust your intuition. You know, it's work because being a trauma therapist all these years. You don't just let anybody into your house. You don't just let anybody watch your kids, right? You don't let just anybody into your bed, like, right? Remember that you are an extension of your children. So, like, respect yourself. But I mean, really finding really, really good people to love you is so important. You cannot do it by yourself. You weren't meant to. So if you're pissed off and you're burnt out and you're feeling guilty because you really just want your alone time and your fun time too, no matter how old you are, that is completely healthy and it's good because you want to be modeling, in my opinion, my values, you want to be modeling to your children that you're a whole person so that they have permission to be a whole person.
Absolutely. I love
You're
that.
more than you're being a parent. You're more than your job. You're more than who you're in a relationship with, right? You are all those things, and you are a soul.
You are all of it, and creating the space to welcome all of it, to experience all of it, to be with all of it. And I love your recommendation. It requires good people, supportive people, unconditionally loving people around you, from family to community to partnerships, right? Friendships, career, business partners, all of the above. Like, it gets to feel good for you, and you get to create the space for the pleasure to be experienced in your life. And if you're not, then it might be one of those times to zoom out a little bit, like we were talking at the beginning of this episode. Zoom out, be the observer. What is not feeling good? And I actually have a freebie on my website. It's called From Resistance to Receiving. And it's a beautiful guide to help people zoom out and really get clear on what are these areas that aren't actually feeling good, right? Because sometimes I feel like the logical brain gets in it so quickly and is like, what do I do? How do I do it? And it requires actually tapping into the feelings first. Yeah, not surrender. But I really appreciate that feedback. And yeah, it's been amazing diving into this conversation with you today. There's so much amazing things that we got to discuss and dive into and talk about. And I really appreciate your reflections and your feedback and your experience. And I have one more question for you that I ask everyone that's on my podcast. And that is, if you could encourage and invite the listener into one thing that would support a more mindful approach to human evolution, what would that be?
I have this image in my head, and I did use some Canva AI to just show for myself some things that were coming up from my meditations and my dreams. And one of the visions I had was about cleansing the hands of humanity. Do it together. We are all washing our hands in the same well. Don't ever think for a second that you are different, better, or less than anyone. Your ability to take care of you and take care of your neighbor are the only way that we're going to live a better life. So I don't know if that hits the mindfulness, but it hits the relationship, how we walk into this new world question.
I think that's a beautiful and extremely impactful answer. And it comes back to everything we've been talking about today is community. Like, you can't do it alone, and you are equals with everybody around you. It's not about money. It's not about wealth. It's not about life experience. It's about one soul to another, one energy to another. And I always try to remind myself when I step into any type of exchange where I'm like, I can't find anything to talk to this person about. There's just nothing, right? And I always invite myself back into this curiosity of, where can I find resonance with this person? There's something that we can find resonance with, and where is that? And so even if your neighbor has the most obnoxious dogs in the world that jump over the fence all the time, you can find something to resonate with them on, right? And so, yeah, just an invitation that you offered as well, like, wash your hands together. Find the thing that can lead to connection, because I'm personally a big believer that connection and intimacy is what is going to change the world.
Agreed.
I love it so much. Lauren, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom and your light with us today. Where can the listener find you if they're interested in being a deeper part of your world?
I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I have a website, and it's just Lauren DeMarco Coaching.com. Lauren DeMarco Coaching 1111 or 1111 for all the numerology angel number people out there. Shoot me an email, and then also I don't do virtual one-on-ones, but I also, in the spirit of community, I have several group offerings and connection opportunities, and then I also host in-person events seasonally.
Amazing. And remind me where you're located in the world.
I am in Maryland, USA.
Perfect. So if you're listening and you're in Maryland, go find Lauren, reach out to her, be a part of some of the community events that she has going on. You're particularly in the Baltimore area, correct?
Yes, I live just north of Baltimore, but I host a lot of things in the Baltimore City area.
Awesome. Well, I will put all of Lauren's contact info in the show notes so you can easily reach out to her. And again, Lauren, thank you so much for being here. I've loved diving deeper with you and getting to know you more. And thank you to the listener who took your time to tune into this conversation. If you have any questions, comments, if there's something about this conversation that really lit a fire in you or created some sort of change or deep impact, reach out to me, reach out to Lauren. Let us know. We love it when you share the medicine. So thank you again, Lauren. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. See you in the next episode.